Most people don't mess up difficult conversations because they are aggressive or because they are hesitant. They mess them up because they are emotional, unclear, or trying to say too much. And you usually realize that after the conversation is over. This book breaks down what actually helps in those moments. And I'll walk you through the 4 rules that make difficult conversations much easier to handle. When I say difficult conversations, I'm not talking about debates or arguments with strangers online. I mean conversations where the stakes are real and emotions are involved. Things like setting a boundary, addressing something that bothered you, saying no, or having a conversation you've been putting off because you don't want to make things worse. The reason these conversations are hard isn't because you don't know what to say. It's because when emotions show up, your body reacts before your brain does. And once that happens, it's easy to say too much or say it the wrong way. That's why the first rule has nothing to do with wording. Rule 1. Pause before you respond. Most people think the problem is what they say, but in difficult conversations, the real problem is how fast they say it. When emotions are high, your first response is usually a reaction, not a decision. This pause is what separates reacting from responding. And once you start reacting, it's easy to say too much, explain yourself, or escalate the situation. Pausing doesn't mean staying silent forever. It just means giving yourself a moment so your brain can catch up before your mouth does. Even a few seconds, taking a breath, or saying, "Let me think about it for a second," can completely change how the rest of the conversation goes. Once you slow yourself down, the next problem usually shows up right away. You realize you are reacting to what you think the other person means, not what they've actually said. Rule 2. Ask one clarifying question. Most difficult conversations fall apart because people argue against assumptions. They respond to tone, guess intentions, or fill in gaps with their own story. For example, someone says something quickly and you react to how it sounded instead of what they actually meant. A single clarifying question slows everything down and brings the conversation back to reality. Not multiple questions, not a speech, just one. Something as simple as, "What do you mean by that?" Or, "Can you help me understand what you are asking for?" Asking one question doesn't mean you agree. It just means you are making sure you are responding to the right problem, not the wrong one. Once you are clear on what the other person is actually saying, the next mistake people make is trying to say everything at once. Rule 3. Say the truth in one clean sentence. This is where most people lose control of the conversation. Not because they lie, but because they over-explain. They add context, they justify themselves, or they try to make the other person feel comfortable. And the more you talk, the easier it is for your message to get lost. One clean sentence forces clarity. It makes you decide what actually matters instead of saying everything you are thinking. For example, instead of giving a long explanation, you say, "That doesn't work for me," or "I'm not okay with that." You don't need to convince. You don't need to justify. You just need to be clear. The goal isn't to say more. It's to say what matters and stop. Once you've said what matters, the conversation still needs one more thing: direction. Rule 4. End with a boundary or next step. Most difficult conversations don't go wrong because they are tense. They go wrong because they never actually end. People talk in circles, repeat the same points, or leave things vague, and that's when frustration builds. A boundary or a next step gives the conversation direction. A boundary is what you will or won't accept. A next step is what happens after this conversation. For example, "I'm not okay with this continuing," or "Let's revisit this tomorrow," or "If this doesn't change, I'm going to step back." You are not trying to control the other person. You are just being clear about what you will do next. That clarity is what keeps difficult conversations from turning into ongoing problems. Clarity at the end is what makes the conversation count. Difficult conversations aren't about saying the perfect thing. They are about staying steady, being clear, and not making things worse than they need to be. These rules won't make conversations easy, but they make them manageable, which is usually what people are actually looking for. And if what makes these conversations hard is that same feeling of not knowing whether you're doing the right thing yet, this video breaks down why that feeling shows up and why it's actually part of progress. Remember, the path is yours to walk. And as always, I'm in your corner, rooting for you.